The heavy double doors of the royal throne room opened with a loud boom. The sound echoed through the massive hall, bouncing off the crystal walls and golden statues of warriors past. Hundreds of alien nobles turned their heads at once. In walked a human Captain Jack Hayes. He looked small compared to the towering pillars, the glowing banners, and the armored Zarnath guards lining both sides. His boots clicked on the marble floor as he walked forward. Calm and steady, he didn't bow. Not even a slight nod. Gasps rippled through the crowd of alien elites. Some looked offended, others curious. Many had never seen a real human in person. At the end of the hall, high on her floating throne, sat Queen Zelriatha, supreme monarch of the Zarnath Empire. She was tall, elegant, and terrifying. Her silver skin shimmered under the throne lights. Her golden crown had glowing blue stones that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her sharp violet eyes locked on Jack. She raised one perfect brow. So, this is the human. He's the one who refused. Our command, Your Grace, one advisor whispered beside her. Jack stopped in the center of the room. His arms were folded behind his back, like a soldier on parade. He didn't speak. Not yet. Queen Zelriah waved her hand. Servant stepped forward, carrying something glowing on a black velvet pillow. The servant walked with care, as if holding a sacred treasure. It was a reproductive contract, a living scroll, glowing with ancient alien energy, full of terms binding the signer to royal service. And to the queen herself. Jack's eyes didn't flinch. You were summoned, Zelriah said, her voice smooth but sharp like a blade. You ignored us. And now you stand here in front of my court, thinking your silence is strength? I came, Jack finally said. His voice was steady. That's enough. Murmurs again. One alien noble hissed in disbelief. The queen stood up. The throne glided forward, floating toward Jack with a soft hum. When she stopped just above him, her robe stretched behind like wings. Her beauty was unmatched, her power undeniable. She smiled. You humans are full of noise, she said. Boastful, proud, fragile. Yet something about you amuses me. She reached down and took the scroll from the pillow. It floated between her fingers. This contract is sacred. It would bind you to the royal bloodline. You'd carry my children, serve the Empire, and be rewarded with honor no human could dream of. She held it out. Sign it, she said, and become something greater than you are. For a long time, Jack didn't move. Everyone in the room leaned in. Even the queen tilted her head slightly, curious what the bold little human would do. Jack stepped forward. He took the scroll in both hands, and then he tore it in half. A flash of light burst from the broken scroll. The pieces vanished into smoke. The velvet pillow dropped to the floor. Silence, dead silence. Not even the queen moved. The alien guards reached for their weapons. One noble let out a growl. The scribe dropped his tablet, but Jack just stood there, staring up at the queen. I don't sign away my soul for titles, he said. You brought me here to kneel. I came to stand. The queen's eyes narrowed. Her smile disappeared. Everyone waited for her to shout, to command his arrest, to order his death instead. She laughed, a single cold laugh. Then she leaned in close and whispered, Interesting. She turned her back and floated back to her throne. The nobles whispered like 1,000 snakes. The guards hesitated, unsure what to do. Very well, the queen said, now sitting again. Let the human stay. For now, we'll see if his fire lasts longer than his words. Jack didn't react. He simply turned his head slightly, scanning the room. He knew what this was. A test, a trap, a game. But humans don't play by alien rules. He walked out of the throne room. The silence followed him like a shadow. And the queen. She kept staring. At the door, he walked through, her eyes glowing softly. She had underestimated him, but not anymore. Asterisk. The Queen Zelriah stared at the empty spot where the human had stood. Her fingers tapped the side of her throne light, steady and sharp. It was a sound her court had learned to fear. The broken contract still lingered in the air like smoke from a fire that burned too fast. He tore it, whispered one of the nobles. He actually tore the sacred contract. But the queen didn't shout. She didn't rage. Her mind was already moving fast and focused. "Bring the arena, master," she said coldly. That evening, Captain Jack Hayes was escorted to a different part of the Palisa, darker, older section. The walls here were made of jagged black stone, and the air was thick with heat and metal. The guards didn't speak. Neither did Jack. He could feel it in their silence. Something serious was coming. Then the doors opened. The grand arena, it was. Underground, glowing from strange alien torches that floated in the air like spirits. Around the circular pit were a few high-ranking nobles, handpicked by the queen to witness what came next. And there she was, Queen Zelraya, standing high above, her arms crossed and her gaze sharp. "You want to insult my empire?" she said, her voice echoing through the arena. "Then earn the right to speak." A large gate rumbled open. Something inside growled. Out stepped a gracker beast 10 feet tall, covered in green scales and thick black armor plates. Its 4 glowing red eyes locked onto Jack. Its jaws opened, revealing 2 rows of saw-like teeth. The nobles cheered. This wasn't just punishment. This was entertainment. Jack didn't flinch. They threw him a single weapon-A staff with a dull edge. A weak choice. Maybe on purpose. "Survive 5 minutes," the queen said. "If you can," the beast roared, and the timer began. Jack moved fast. The moment the gracker charged, he didn't attack. He dodged barely. Dust flew up from where the claws slammed down. He wasn't trying to fight. He was watching, studying each time the beast lunged. Jack noticed something. A delay in its right leg. A scar on the neck. A blind spot in its movement. The aliens thought he was running to save his life, but he was reading the monster like a... At minute 3, the beast pinned him to the wall. The crowd screamed. The queen stood, but Jack didn't panic. His hand reached under the armor of the creature's leg, found a nerve cluster, and jammed the staff deep into it. The beast howled in pain and collapsed. The nobles froze. Jack climbed onto the creature's back, wrapped his arms around its head, and whispered something. The beast stopped. It didn't move. It just breathed. Slow. Calm. Obeying. He wasn't fighting it anymore. He had tamed it. Above, the queen stared in disbelief. Her fingers stopped tapping. Her lips parted slightly. Jack looked up at her. Then he rode the gracker toward the exit gate like it was a trained mount. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't wait for applause. He simply left the arena, back in the throne hall. The queen remained standing, long after the others had left. He tamed it. ... Dub. She whispered. No tricks. No weapons. Just pure understanding, calm, focus, and fearless action. And he did it not to survive, but to prove a point. This human was different. She smiled slowly, something dangerous flickering in her eyes. "Very well, Captain Hayes," she said to herself. "Let's see how far you're willing to go." The game had changed. Now it was her who wanted to understand him. The doors to the throne room opened again, but this time, the guards didn't lead him in. Jack Hayes walked in alone, head high, coat still dusty from the arena. A single scar running down his cheek where the gracker beast had nicked him. He didn't wait for permission, didn't wait for a welcome. He stepped onto the sacred carpet meant only for royal blood. Gasps rose again, but softer this time. The fear had shifted, not of him, but of what he might say next. Queen Zelraya was seated on her throne again, but her expression had changed. Gone was the playful smirk, the arrogant tilt of her chin. Now she watched him with narrowed eyes, focused, almost intrigued. "You are lucky," she said slowly, "that the beast did not crush you." Jack didn't smile. "Or maybe," he replied, "I was lucky to understand what even your warriors couldn't." Another ripple of shock. He was insulting her army, and he didn't care. "You still don't kneel?" she asked, fingers curled on the edge of her throne. Jack looked around the hall, then raised a brow. Kneel? He echoed. No, you invited me here. If you wanted someone to kneel, you should have called a servant, not a human. The nobles hissed. One shouted, Show respect, primitive. But the queen raised her hand, and silence returned. She slowly stood and walked down the steps toward him. Each step was silent, elegant, deadly when she stopped. She was only inches away. She looked up at him, just slightly. Their eyes locked. If I ordered you to kneel, she asked, voice soft now, would you disobey me? Again? Jack didn't move. Without question, another tense silence. But then she laughed. A real, rich, ringing laugh that echoed through the throne room. The nobles didn't know what to do. Some stared. Some backed away. Jack didn't laugh. He waited. She turned, robes swirling behind her, and returned to her throne. Sitting slowly, she crossed one leg over the other and said, Then speak, human. Tell me why you came, since you clearly won't bow. Jack didn't waste words. I didn't come to serve. I didn't come to be part of your bloodline or your breeding plans, he said. I came because Earth intercepted a transmission one with your seal, a call for help from you. The queen's face froze. You lie. I don't, Jack said simply. You sent it 17 years ago. Message sealed in your name, marked classified. It was buried deep. Someone here didn't want it found. The nobles whispered again. Zelraya's hand tightened around the edge of her throne. Jack pulled out a small device and pressed it. A projection appeared. A younger queen panicked, armor scratched, smoke behind her. Her voice was strained. To any surviving allied forces, if you receive this, the Zarnath throne is under threat. We may not last the next cycle. We need assistance, military or diplomatic, please. If any remain, help us. The message flickered out. The queen said nothing. Jack stepped forward. You forgot what you once asked for. You begged for help. Now you treat everyone like property. Nobles began to shout again, calling him a liar, a trickster, a parasite. But this time, she didn't stop them. She was staring at the floor. Remembering after a moment, she stood. She walked toward Jack again, slower this time. Who else knows? She asked quietly. Only me, Jack said. For now. Her voice was almost a whisper. And what do you want for your silence? Jack stepped even closer. His eyes didn't blink. I want you to stop pretending you rule everything. The truth? And I want your people to see that humans don't come here to kneel. He paused. We come to rebuild what's broken. Queen looked at him long and hard. She didn't reply, but for the first time, Jin looked down on him not as a ruler above a man, but as a woman staring into something dangerous. Something real. She turned and raised her hand. This court is dismissed. The nobles protested. She raised her voice, cold and sharp. I said go. They left quickly. Only she and Jack remained. And in the silence, she spoke 3 words. Sit with me. Asterisk. Whispers had wings in the Zarnath Empire. By the next sunrise. Every noble ship. Every galactic diplomat. In every rival clan had heard the same story. The human made the queen sit in silence. Some called it a lie. Others swore their spies saw it with their own eyes. But all agreed on one thing. Captain Jack Hayes was dangerous. In a dark chamber aboard the rival Yarkin fleet. Commander Zune slammed his fist on the table. She let him. Speak in her court. Sit with her. Alone. A hologram floated between the alien leader's Jack's face, frozen in a still frame. He's not just bold, Zune growled. He's infecting her with ideas, another general hissed, if he mates. With her, the bloodline changes. The old ways end. But what if that's what she wants? Someone asked softly. The silence that followed was colder than space. Meanwhile, in a forgotten wing of the Zarnath archives, Jack moved between data terminals with a young alien scribe named Velna. She was assigned to him as a guide, but Jack knew she was more of a spy. Still, she was useful and scared. You shouldn't have spoken to her like that, Velna whispered. No one does that. Jack didn't stop searching the files. And what happened to the ones who tried? Velna looked down. They're gone. Exactly, Jack muttered. He found what he was looking for, a hidden folder marked Lineage. Deviation Protocol, locked by royal command. When he tried to open it, a red warning flashed. Restricted. Only royal blood may access. Jack leaned back. Thought so? Velna swallowed nervously. What's inside? Truth, Jack said, or lies dressed as law. He turned to her. And someone's scared, I'll find it. Back at the throne room, Queen Zelraya stood alone, staring. At the stars through her glass ceiling, she hadn't summoned anyone. Today, not even her council. She was thinking about Earth, about Jack's words, and about that old recording, the version of herself that had begged for help 17 years ago. How? Had she become so cold? Was she still that scared girl in armor, hiding behind tradition? Her fingers touched the old seal ring on her hand. The one she used to sign the contract, Jack tore in half. She didn't know why, but she didn't feel angry anymore. She felt unsteady, but outside her palace. The air was not calm. Fleets in orbit buzzed with secret orders. Other empires had noticed her silence. And silence from Zelraya usually meant something deadly was coming. But this time, it wasn't warships she was building. It was questions. Who truly held power? What was the purpose of the contract tradition? And if a human could walk in, speak, truth, and not die, what else had the Zarneth Empire gotten wrong? On a distant moon colony, a young alien girl watched a pirated holoplay of Jack's arena battle. She gasped as he tamed the beast. Her father snatched the projector away. You will not admire that thing, he barked, but ... It didn't kill. The beast, the girl said softly. He helped it. The father stared at her. Then at the paused image of the human riding the Gracker like a friend. Even he didn't know how to answer. In a quiet room lit by candles, a rival queen signed in. Order for Jack's capture or assassination. Before he infects more minds, she whispered to her assassin. But another monarch, watching from afar, poured a drink and smiled. Let's see if the Queen of Zarnath falls for him, she mused, if she does. Maybe humans are more useful than we thought? Meanwhile, Jack stood on a high tower overlooking the capital. The wind pulled at his coat. Velna stood beside him, nervous as always. They're watching you, she said. Everyone, allies, enemies, the Queen. I know, Jack replied calmly. What if they attack? He turned to her. His eyes were steady. Then let them. Then with that, the human who refused to kneel stared up at the alien stars and smiled. He wasn't just challenging one queen anymore. He was challenging an entire galaxy. The palace was quiet. Too quiet. Even the air felt thicker like the walls. Themselves were holding their breath. Deep beneath the royal chambers, inside a hidden vault sealed by bloodprint and genetic lock, Sial Rhea stood alone. A single glowing console lit the dark room. Her hand hovered above it, shaking slightly. She had not entered this room in 17 years. The moment her finger touched the lock, the room came alive. Blue glyphs danced across the walls. A small pedestal rose from the floor. On it was a black crystal shard, pulsing slowly like a dying heart. She stared at it. This was the last piece of Project Ellerin. The truth she had hidden from everyone. Even her closest advisors thought the program was canceled. Only she knew what it really meant, and now, the human knew too much. Above ground, Jack sat in the Queen's personal library, flipping through alien scrolls with Velna nearby. She watched him with wide eyes. Why are you doing this? She asked again. You're not even Zarnathi. Why care about our history? Jack didn't look up, because lies spread fast, but truth. Truth changes things. He slid an old scroll across the table. Velna read the title out loud. Royal Record. Treaty of the First Binding. Humans Zarnathi Union. Her hands trembled. That can't be real, she whispered. Jack nodded. It is. Humans were once your allies, partners, not servants, not breeders. Velna blinked. But why would the Queen erase that? Jack looked her in the eyes. Because if people knew the truth, they wouldn't follow her the same way. At that same moment, Zelraya activated the black crystal. A small, floating hologram of her mother appeared. Queen Varel of the old line. She spoke softly. If you've found this daughter, then the peace has failed. I tried. I believed we could live beside humans, build something better. But fear won. The nobles. They forced me to destroy the treaty. Burn the records. Say the humans betrayed us. Forgive me. The message faded. Zelraya stood still, cold sweat on her skin. Her whole rule had been built on a lie her own mother tried to fix. And now, human had uncovered it. She didn't call for her guards. She didn't summon her council. Instead, she walked quietly to the library. Jack was still reading when she entered. Velna stood and backed away quickly. Bowing low, Jack didn't rise. You came alone. I didn't want noise, the queen said. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then she walked to the table, placed the black crystal on the surface, and pushed it toward him. This holds everything, she said. My mother's voice. The truth. The shame. Jack didn't touch it yet. Why show me? Because I don't want to rule by lies anymore, she whispered. Jack leaned forward. Then show your people too, she flinched. They'll revolt. They might. She looked at him, eyes sharp. You don't understand. I'll lose everything. Jack stood slowly, gaze firm. Then maybe you never had it to begin with. She closed her eyes, breathed in, and for the first time in her rule, she looked truly afraid. Not of war, not of humans, but of herself. What would you have me do, Jack Hayes? She asked softly. He reached for the black crystal, and this time didn't destroy it. He held it up and said, Let's rewrite the stars, Your Majesty. But outside the palace walls, storm clouds gathered. Spy drones buzzed in the distance. Ships in orbit turned their weapons toward the capital. The other empires had learned the truth too, and they were not ready to let it spread. Asterisk. The night sky above the palace burned red. Dozens of warships hovered in orbit. Their cannons pointed downward, not at another empire, but at the throne of Zarnoth itself. Inside the royal tower, Queen Zelraya stood at her balcony alone, watching her own allies prepare to strike. Her people had not revolted yet, but her enemies didn't need a rebellion. They only needed fear. Fear that she, the unshakable queen, had been shaken by a human. And worse, that she might love him, in the quiet of the royal garden, beneath the glowing trees. Jack Hayes waited. He wasn't a prince, wasn't a soldier of the empire, just a man who told the truth and refused to kneel. He sat on a stone bench, watching the sky flicker with warning lights. He knew something was coming, but he didn't expect her to come alone, no. Guards, no throne robes, just her. She wore a deep blue cloak, her silver hair falling loose over her shoulders. In her hands she held something wrapped in a silk cloth. Jack stood as she approached. I expected warships, he said. You'll still get those, she replied softly. She unwrapped the cloth. It was the contract. The same glowing reproductive scroll he'd once torn in half. But this time, something was different. Her signature was already on it. Not as a command, not as a demand, but as a request. And below her name was a single handwritten line in Old Zarnothi. Not for power, not for legacy, but for understanding. Jack stared at it. The silence between them was heavy. What is this? He asked. Zelraya's voice trembled slightly. It's not a command, it's not law, it's choice. She held it out to him. I've ruled my people for over a decade, with strength, with tradition, never with honesty. Not truly, until now. Jack didn't reach for it. He looked at her, calm and steady. And what happens if I say no again? She took a breath. Then I will still stand beside you. His eyes narrowed slightly. Even if it costs you your crown. Especially if it costs me my crown, she said. For a long moment, Jack said nothing. Then he gently took the contract in both hands and lit it on fire. The scroll burned in silence. Soft golden flames eating away at the ancient text. Zelraya didn't stop him when it was nothing but ashes. Jack looked into her eyes. We don't need contracts to change the stars, he said. We just need to be brave enough to do it without chains. She blinked. Then she smiled. Not the royal smile, not the political one, a real one, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But then alarms began to howl. The sky outside turned crimson. Explosions echoed from the outer defense towers. Velna ran into the garden, out of breath. Hi, Queen, Captain, the Yarkan fleet. They've declared your throne compromised. What does that mean? Jack asked. Zelraya clenched her fists. It means they're coming. Not for a battle, she looked toward the palace gates, but for an execution. Jack pulled out his communicator. Any loyal guard units still standing? Velna nodded. Scattered, but most won't fight without orders. Jack turned to Zelraya, then give the order. She hesitated then. Slowly. She removed her crown and tossed it onto the burning ashes of the contract. I am no longer their queen, she said, but I will fight beside you as your equal. Jack nodded once. Good. Then let's show them what happens when you push a human and a dethroned queen into a corner. They walked back into the palace together, not as ruler and subject, not as man and mate, but as allies, and behind them. The trees still glowed softly, as if remembering the moment when a queen chose love over legacy. The palace gates fell just before dawn. Flames lit the horizon. The Yarkan elite units stormed forward like shadows with weapons, ready to seize the throne and kill anyone in their path. But they weren't prepared for what stood in their way. Not a line of royal guards. Not the Zarnath generals. Not the queen. They found a human standing in the main hall, sleeves rolled up, blood on his knuckles, eyes burning with fire. Captain Jack Hayes, the man who shredded the contract, the man who refused to kneel, the man who was no one's subject, but everyone's hope. Where's the queen? One of the invaders growled. Jack pointed toward the grand staircase. She's gone. Slice. But he needed time. Velna and the last of the loyal guards were helping evacuate civilians through hidden tunnels, and Zelraya. She was donning her armor, the one she hadn't worn since the old wars, silver. Elegant, deadly, the armor of a warrior queen. Above the palace, on the spire's highest point, the emergency beacons changed color from red to white, a color never used before. It meant one thing. The throne is no more. We stand as equals. Signal spread through the capital. Civilians stopped fleeing. Soldiers hesitated. Old warriors, who once pledged to the bloodline, paused, because for the first time in history, a queen stepped down, not out of defeat, but choice, and beside her, the human who inspired it all, stood ready to die with her. If needed, down in the halls, Jack was outnumbered, but he was not outmatched. Every time a Yarkan soldier charged, he used their momentum, their size, their anger against them. He didn't fight like Zarnath warriors. He fought like a human. Unpredictable, dirty, brilliant. Then came the blast. One of the enemy, elites had broken through a side gate, charging with a plasma lance aimed straight at Jack's heart. But before it struck, a silver blur cut across the room. XL single quotes. Rhea, she took the hit with her armor and countered with a slash of her twin blades. The enemy fell. She turned to Jack. You all right? I was doing fine, he smirked. You were losing, she replied, smirking back. They stood side by side now, back to back. As more enemies poured into the chamber, the battle lasted only 20 more minutes, but those 20 minutes changed Zarnath history, because the people saw it a broadcast. Secretly, through palace drones, they saw their former queen fighting for them, not above them. They saw the human outsider bleed for a land that wasn't his. And most of all, they saw that strength didn't come from bloodlines, it came from choice. When the last enemy dropped their weapon and surrendered, silence fell over the palace. Not the silence of fear, the silence of something new. Later in the ruined throne room, Zelraya walked beside Jack. There was no crown on her head, no scroll in her hand, just a small, golden pendant she now wore, symbol of unity, with the Zarnath star and Earth's circle crossed. You know what this means, don't you? She asked quietly. Jack looked around at the shattered statues, the broken symbols of old power. It means we start from scratch. She nodded. No more thrones, no more contracts. She paused. But maybe something better, he turned to her. And are you ready for that? Her eyes softened. I wasn't before I met you. Then, for the first time, not as queen, not as warrior, but simply as Zelraya. She leaned forward and touched her forehead to his, a Zarnathi gesture of peace and of love. Weeks later, the galaxy watched in shock as a joint. Broadcast aired from a simple stone circle outside the old palace grounds. No throne, no banners, just two figures, a human. A former queen. They spoke of unity, of rebuilding, of a galaxy no longer ruled by dominance but by shared truth. And as their voices spread across the stars, something greater than empires began, something human, and something very, very Zarnathi.